Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some Tales from the Front Desk. Before we start, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. But I'm told I shouldn't be offering cookies anymore because some of you are threatening to come to my house and get them. Alright, our story today is actually a single story with two updates that comes to us from TheStoryOfSome. It's called, I May Be Getting Fired Tomorrow for Talking Back to a Company Guest. Let's jump right in. As the title suggests, I'm fairly certain I will be getting fired tomorrow. I'd like to hear what others have to say about this interaction. Do you think I'm in the wrong? What I can do to prepare for the inevitable meeting tomorrow? Also, sorry there's no TLDR. I tried to think of how I can make this shorter, but there's really too much context. I work at a decently sized Chariot hotel in California. We've had a guest staying with us for a little over a month now. We can call him Mr. Patel. He's staying with us for business under a company that makes the hotel a lot of money from its frequent guests and events. He and I haven't really gotten along well during his stay. There's been a history of me politely informing him of something and then he'd twist my words. Then, when I'd try to correct it, he gets annoyed. More on that below the story. Anyway, the same thing happened today, but this time it escalated. Around 7:40 p.m., Mr. Patel called us to check if we had the shuttle available. We told him we did, and he said he'd be here soon. After the call, we noticed that we had a huge spike in last-minute reservations that oversold us some room types. Usually, no big deal, but as we were in the process of fixing it, we noticed that housekeeping left us without enough clean rooms. We were scrambling to make a plan and ultimately decided that we had no choice but to have our houseman, who is also our shuttle driver, clean a few rooms, and I would help them as much as I could. As my other front desk coworker and I were talking about this, Mr. Patel came up to us ready to go. It was around 7:55 p.m., and as we were looking up the place where he wanted to be dropped off at, we noticed that it was closing at 8 p.m. We confirmed if he still wanted to go since it was closing soon. He said he knew it was closing, but he wanted to see if it will be open still when he gets there. He wanted the driver to wait there while he checked, and if it wasn't open, he would come back. It was a little annoying, but I said okay, and kindly asked him that the next time, please try and check if the place will for sure be open, or not, before we drive, because our houseman can get very busy around these times. He then said it was not his fault for giving us misinformation, and next time we shouldn't say it's available. I politely tried explaining to him that it wasn't misinformation. We do have the driver available. She was standing right next to us waiting, but the place was closing very soon and we are also very busy. He again misconstrued what I said and was insisting that I was telling him that our driver wasn't available. I was a little annoyed that he wasn't understanding what I was saying. This guest has a history of that, more on that later, but did not speak to him in a rude or even rushed tone, even though I was under some pressure. I'm usually very good at staying professional during times like these. I then tried again a few times to explain that wasn't what I was saying, but he would raise his voice at me and cut me off every time, saying that he will not argue with me, he is telling me what to do. He then said that whether or not he can get the shuttle is fine, but we should not tell him it is available when it is not. At this point, I was getting very upset, but stayed calm and did not raise my voice at him even though he was yelling and cutting me off. I had enough of him being completely unreasonable and told our houseman never mind, no shuttle right now. We were too busy with other things. He of course was not happy with this response and continued yelling at me in front of a few other guests. I apologized to him and said maybe we could take him tomorrow. He screamed for the manager's information and my name. I handed him my manager's card, stuck out the side of my chest, and pointed at my name tag so he could clearly see it. He tried calling the number on our card, but that got him even more upset. My managers don't have a direct line, so the number on the card only calls the hotel. He said I tried to lie to him again and gave him the wrong information. I said that their emails are on the card and that they will be here tomorrow if he'd like to speak with them. He pouted his way to the couch and sat there for a while. In the meantime, my houseman and I were on our way to go clean rooms. I did not see him again for the rest of the day, and luckily we were able to get everything sorted regarding the rooms. I sent an email to my manager explaining the situation pretty much as you are reading it now. I had the next 3 days off thankfully, so the only thing left to do was wait. The next day, I got a text from the coworker that I worked with then, and she said that my manager was not upset. She said she would talk to our sales in regard to this company guest due to him also having a sour attitude toward our restaurant staff. I'm pretty close to my manager, but I also understand money talks. I was happy to hear this though because I was fully expecting her to take his side because he was with the high-spending company. Well, the next day, I got another text from the same coworker saying that my manager ended up talking to the guest and now the tone has completely changed. She is siding with him now and is even planning a lunch with him, sales, and a head group coordinator of the company as an apology for the incident. They're also wanting me to apologize for what happened. I knew it was too good to be true. I do not plan on apologizing for any of this for multiple reasons. I know I could have just accepted that he was not going to understand what I was trying to tell him. But after so many similar interactions with him, along with the stress from the oversold rooms, I really wanted to stand up for myself this time. I have a feeling that not apologizing is what's going to lead to me losing my job. I guess it's a pride thing at this point, but I'm not so sure I care anymore. I suppose I'll just have to wait and see. Now, OP added an edit down at the bottom. It says, some extra context and other interactions with him and some company guests. This guest and a few others from the same company have a terrible habit of last-minute shuttles to places like Walmart, the mall, temples, different restaurants, etc. every single day. Sometimes they only want the driver to take them to places and immediately come back. Sometimes they make the driver wait for them outside of their destination for up to 20 minutes and then come back. A lot of the time before we take them, we ask them if they would like to schedule a pickup as well, but they decline every time. It is becoming a tiresome process, and this was the final straw for me. Also bear in mind that our driver's job is not only to drive, they also are supposed to be in the back doing laundry and handling guest requests. I have attempted to politely communicate with Mr. Patel a few times before. I once said to him that we'd greatly appreciate it if he and his colleagues could please let us know a pickup time for future shuttles. He said that if someone dropped him off, he will let us know when we can pick him back up. He completely skipped over the point of what I was saying, but I did not push it. I tried explaining that our doors were locked after 8 p.m. and to please make sure he has his key on him just in case we are not here. He smiled and said, no, if you are here, you can open it. I tried once more to explain that yes, we can open it, but it was just in case we were not here. He continued to smile and condescendingly said, well, you are here, so you can open it for me. Again, I did not try to push my actual point any further. He and some of his colleagues have a history of sometimes booking the shuttle to go somewhere, but when the time comes, they are nowhere to be seen. When we call them, they say they will be down in 5 to 10 minutes. They are often not down at that time. Instead, they are late. So the shuttle driver either waits or comes back later when they are actually ready. This messes with our scheduling for other guests who need the shuttle, as we are not sure when it will be available next at that point. After a few times of this happening, I spoke up to Mr. Patel. I told him that we were happy to schedule shuttles for him. However, we noticed that they weren't always down at the specified time, and to please try to let us know if they will be running late for it. His response to this was simply, he will get here when he gets there. He tried calling the front desk once from his phone, and when I picked up, there was nobody on the line. I said hello 3 times before hanging up. He called again right after, same thing. He called for a 3rd time, and this time my coworker answered it, and he was finally there with no hesitation. Later, when he came back from a shuttle pickup, he came up to the front desk and spoke to me in a very belittling manner, saying that in the future, I need to wait for someone to speak before hanging up the phone. I apologized and tried explaining to him that I spoke a few times and waited for a bit, but nobody was there. He got upset and again said, "No, I need to wait for someone to answer." I told him sorry, but we are busy. I cannot wait for a long time because we have other calls and many check-ins. He was getting visibly upset and kept insisting that it was my fault for not waiting. At this point, I did not want to deal with him anymore, so I just said, "Alright." At 7:55 p.m., he asked for our shuttle to a nearby temple that was closing in 5 minutes to check if it will be open. We were very busy due to not having enough clean rooms, so I needed our only houseman to help me clean rooms. I told him we could take him since it was close by, but for next time, please make sure the destination will for sure be open because we can get busy around this time. He did not like this response and twisted it as us lying about having the shuttle available. I politely tried explaining to him that that's not what I said, but he kept cutting me off and raising his voice at me. I eventually had enough and told him sorry, no shuttle right now because we are too busy for him just to go check. He yelled at me some more and got the manager's info. Wait a minute, I thought OP said they weren't very good at writing a TLDR, but there it is, that last paragraph was the exact story that we had above, but in really condensed form. Ah well, let's move on. We have part 2 from OP as well. It says, follow up, so I didn't get fired, but let's jump right in. This is a follow-up to my last post. For anyone new, there's sort of a TLDR at the bottom. We just read that. There's a lot to explain though, so it's kinda hard to keep it short. Now on to the follow-up. My GM and AGM called me into a meeting as soon as I got to work as expected. My GM explained to me what she and Mr. Patel talked about, and she wholeheartedly believes that I am in the wrong. She essentially said that I shouldn't have denied the guest the shuttle, and that I shouldn't have pointed at my name tag the way that I did because it came off to him as aggressive. She agrees that the guest is an entitled jerk, but states that our job as customer service is to always give them what they want, especially since he is a guest of such a high-spending company. Trust me, I know, it's ridiculous. I tried explaining to her that she is conflicting with her own principles due to her telling us that we have the right to refuse service, but to no avail. She claims that I'm not putting myself in his shoes and not seeing things from his perspective. One of her standout points was that we at the front desk did not communicate properly. Without me knowing, the guest had called 30 minutes prior to coming to the front desk to see when it would next be available. My coworker spoke to him and let him know when. So when he came up to get the shuttle, apparently that's why he was upset it wasn't available. This is flawed reasoning in my opinion, specifically because after asking him to make sure the place would be open or not, he did not think to communicate with me that he had been waiting for a while. Instead, he thought it would be better to intentionally misconstrue what I said and turn it into us lying. When I brought this point up to my manager, she still sided with him, saying that the guest should not have to communicate with us if we already told him it was available. Sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy, like the points I'm trying to make just don't matter to anyone at all. Continuing, I then tried explaining to her that I felt like he has been harassing me, and even gave her the list of all my previous interactions with him. However, she again said that it's customer service and that I cannot take things so personally, and sometimes just have to endure it. Like, yeah, I've worked in the hotel industry for over 4 years now. I understand that sometimes we just have to let things go, but this is a recurring problem. She continued to be steadfast in believing that it was entirely my fault in this case. She was begging me to apologize, but I stuck to my guns, as many of you kindly suggested, and said I would not. After a bit more back and forth, she finally accepted my answer and said she would tell the guest and the company she is still trying to work it out. We ended the meeting and I went on with my shift like normal, albeit in a near constant state of anxiety. So what's the problem now, you may ask? Sounds like it's over, right? I didn't have to apologize, didn't lose my job, sounds like a win, right? Well, he is claiming that I have been discriminatory towards him and his other Indian colleagues due to me treating him differently than other guests. He feels this way because the previous times I've politely tried to explain things to him. I suppose he is feeling singled out, which is simply not the case. It's a matter of me just trying to explain how things work around here, and him not liking that I, a lowly front desk peasant, am speaking to him. He also feels discriminated against because the location he wanted to go to was a Hindu temple, and felt that I was intentionally depriving him of his religion. I guess he planned to do an offering, and I tried to take that away from him. This is where things get heavy and stressful for me. As I mentioned, my manager was begging me to apologize before. As she puts it, things get really messy. I can tell she didn't mean this as a threat, but more as a warning for the unknown. She didn't outright say it, but I have a feeling she means things might get legal if I don't apologize. Or at least, that's what I'm worried about now. I feel like I'm now being forced to choose one of two terrible options. I can either apologize and essentially admit that I was being discriminatory, even though that's not technically what my manager says he wants, but we all know that's what he wants. Or I can hold my ground and not apologize, but possibly face legal repercussions for being discriminatory. This is sort of freaking me out, and I feel like I lose no matter what. I just don't know what to do at this point. I'm not exactly sure of my time frame for deciding, but I imagine the deadline would be sometime after the weekend. I suppose my last resort would be to quit ASAP, but I've always been told that I shouldn't, and instead wait to be fired. I really would just prefer to be fired at this point. I really appreciate all of your support and advice on my last post. I've never felt so understood in my life. I'd super appreciate all of your advice this time more than ever on what my next step should be. Thank you so much. OP added another edit onto this one. It says, P.S. There seems to be quite a few people mentioning the same point as my manager to why I'm in the wrong. I'd like to go over that and reiterate my point to clear up the misunderstanding. Her and others here argument was that I should not have tried to convince the guest taking him there would be a waste of time, and that it's not his fault we were short-handed. The thing is, I did not try to convince him not to go, nor did I cancel the shuttle simply because it would have been a waste of time. In fact, I told him we could take him and our driver was ready, and I completely agree with all the points and that it's not his problem that we were short-handed and needed the driver, which is why I said okay in the first place. That wasn't why I refused either. The reason for all this is simply because after seeing what time the temple was closing, I politely showed him that it was, and asked him that for next time to please try to determine if the place would be open or not for sure, because we can get busy. He then, as this guest has a habit of doing, twisted my words and told me that we lied about having the shuttle ready. He feels this way apparently because he had been waiting for about 30 minutes, which I didn't know at the time. But instead of just communicating that with me, he thought it would be better to once again purposefully misconstrue what I said. It was only after the guest started raising his voice at me and cutting me off from explaining that I decided to cancel the shuttle. I know that you're only reading one side of the story, but I genuinely don't feel I'm being biased about this. I'm explaining exactly what happened. His race, ethnicity, religion, or where he wanted to be dropped off at was not the reason I said no to him. I'm not that kind of person. I said no because he was twisting my words and then raising his voice at me and cutting me off when I tried to explain myself. Now, OP added another edit onto this one. It says, PSS, I fully acknowledge that I could have done some things better, like just letting it go. I was under a lot of stress that specific day, plus was tired of being pushed around by him at that point. I didn't necessarily take that out on him, but I definitely was frustrated with the recurring condescending attitude of the guest, and decided to stand up for myself and try to prioritize what needed to be done at our property. I want to say that I learned from this experience, but really, I don't know what to take from this. Should I let guests walk over me and just accept that? Should I prioritize them over more time-pressing matters that need to be attended to? Or was I right to refuse service in this case, but actually not because it was a high-spending customer? These aren't necessarily questions for you, reader. I'm just venting at this point. I think the most appropriate thing that OP could have done in this case was said, okay, I know I need to apologize, and so be brought before the guest and say to the guest, hi, I apologize that you misunderstood me, and while this might get OP fired on the spot by their boss, well, that might not be so bad considering how the work environment's going to be after this all blows over. OP posted one more response to this story. It says, "Final follow-up. Mr. Glutton of Sympathy left high and dry." Let's jump right in. This is the second and probably final follow-up to my first post. There's no way I can do a reasonable TLDR for both posts, so here's a refresher for everyone. If you're new though, I strongly recommend you read both of them to get the full context. A high-spending company guest, Mr. Patel, needed our shuttle to a temple. He came down less than 10 minutes before the place was closing. I informed him of this, and he said he'd like to go check anyway. I said no problem, but politely asked him that the next time, please try to make sure that the place would be open for sure. He took this as us lying about the shuttle being available. When I tried to explain what I actually said, he would cut me off and start yelling at me. I had enough of that, and we were busy with more pressing matters, so I told him never mind on the shuttle. He eventually spoke to my manager about it and also claims I have been discriminatory toward him during his entire month-long stay. She knows I wouldn't be discriminatory toward anyone, so she's not too focused on that part, but she is siding with him because of the canceled shuttle. She says it was our fault for some miscommunication between the front desk, and that I shouldn't have canceled it despite him yelling at me. The miscommunication part may be fair, but completely misses the point as to why I canceled it on him in the first place. When I tried explaining my reasons, she tried reinforcing hers by essentially telling me comes with the job, and customer is always right even when they aren't. She's usually pretty good at having our backs, but this time I could tell she was worried about losing the high-spending company he works for. He wanted an apology in person, and she went on begging me to do it, but I wouldn't budge. She eventually said okay, and I continued on with my shift like normal. After a couple days of normal shifts, I got called into her office again. She wanted to follow up with me to see if I had changed my mind. I told her that I hadn't, and explained that I felt apologizing would essentially be admitting to being discriminatory, and I obviously couldn't do that. She continued trying to convince me, saying that I didn't have to mention any of that, only the shuttle situation. I mentioned to her again that it felt wrong to apologize to someone who I feel is harassing me. I also gave her the same list as in my first post. She tried reassuring me that it was being looked into by the owner, but I know it's not really being taken seriously. She continued to press me. I was hesitant, but I told her I would think about it. She said that was fine. I started going over all of your replies to my last post. There seemed to be a divide on whether I should do it or not. When I was thinking about the pros and cons, I found that the only thing really holding me back from doing it was pride, and the fact that I don't want to unintentionally apologize for discriminating. It felt bad feeling like my manager didn't have my back, but in reality, it's probably just the owners forcing her hand. They really don't want to lose that high-spending company and are willing to do anything for it, even disregarding an employee's feelings of harassment. That's obviously not an excuse, but I'm trying to understand where my manager is coming from. As I mentioned before, I do like her. She's always been good to me in the past, and I would hate for our relationship to be tarnished just because of my pride. I'd also like to be able to use her as a reference for future jobs. So that's when I decided that I would do it, but very carefully. I wanted to take the politician approach and do a sort of short and sweet non-apology. A couple of people posted really good ones, so I took inspiration from them. Here's what I ended up writing. Dear Mr. Patel, after some diligent reflection with my managers about the situation that occurred on September 25th, 2022, we discovered that there was a breakdown in communication over the shuttle between the front desk team, and I do sincerely apologize for that. We always try to provide every guest the same level of excellent service, and I am disheartened that you felt that you were not receiving said service. In the future, I hope that we can work together to ensure that you have the best experience you can at our hotel. I am looking forward to a mutually respectful and enjoyable relationship. I printed it out and was ready to go. I let my manager know that whenever the guest was ready, we could all meet and I could apologize to him in person as he wanted. Well, turns out now he doesn't want to do it in person anymore, he only wants it via email. I was shocked. I felt at this point he just wanted it out of spite. I was fed up. I told my manager no. If he wanted an apology, it needed to be in person. I needed to make sure that all parties were on the same page, that there was absolutely no miscommunication and no chance of him saying, well, I never got anything. I wanted it audio recorded by at least her and myself. Those were my conditions in order for me to apologize to him. She became very anxious by this response and once again started begging and trying to convince me to just send it via email to get it all over with. I stood my ground and did not budge. She was saddened by this initially, but ultimately said okay and backed down. The guest was leaving in a few days, and I wasn't going to be there when he did. I let her know that he has a couple days until my days off to change his mind, otherwise he would get nothing. I then continued my shift as normal. The next couple days went by as if nothing ever happened. She was acting completely normal with me and did not mention it again. I took my days off, but when I came back, she pulled me into another meeting shortly after clocking in. She wanted to let me know that the owner is still investigating the harassment claim, so it's not being ignored. When I asked her what exactly was being investigated, she told me that it was confidential and couldn't say. Yeah, real reassuring. Not that it really mattered to me at that point, due to my mind being made up on finding a new job. So I just said okay and thank you, and we went on with our days. It's been a little over a week since then, and things have still been completely normal. Mr. Patel is gone now, so there's no chance I'd be apologizing anymore. It's a little weird. I'm a little saddened at the fact I feel the need to leave the place where I feel so comfortable. But it's been on my mind for a while now anyway, so I suppose it's a good opportunity. Whatever happens until then will happen. She's gonna be taking the company's group organizer to lunch to smooth things over. I think it's ridiculous, but I understand it's just business. Hopefully that helps her out, but it's none of my concern any longer. Thank you all again for reading and being so supportive. It felt very cathartic being able to share this. Hopefully, you were able to get some kind of entertainment out of it. One thing to think about here is the reason that they might have wanted it in writing was so that they could give it to a lawyer or at least to the higher-ups at their company so they would have something on file to use against the hotel. This is one of those stories where I'm kinda stuck between, well, you should have apologized, and then part of me says, good on you, OP, for sticking to your guns. Thinking about it, if you did apologize, then it would have been over right away, and it wouldn't have cost the company anything, it wouldn't have cost you anything, and the contract would have been saved. I honestly don't know which way I feel on this one, but I'd like to hear what you all say, so comment down below. Do you think OP was in the right for not apologizing to this guest? Or do you think OP should have tucked their tail between their legs, done the apology, and gotten it over with? Check out OP linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.